In the near future, the United States claims to have solved crime. Unemployment is at record lows. Violence is almost non-existent. Prisons are nearly empty. And every year, the government points to the same reason for the so-called miracle, the purge. For 12 consecutive hours, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., all crime is legal. Murder, arson, assault, emergency services are suspended. Law enforcement disappears. And citizens are left to govern themselves through violence. This is not chaos by accident. It is policy by design. Introduced by the ruling political party known as the New Founding Fathers of America, the purge is marketed as a necessary release, a controlled outlet for aggression meant to preserve order for the remaining 364 days of the year. But behind the patriotic slogans and ceremonial sirens lies a much darker truth. The purge does not eliminate crime. It redefines who crime is allowed to happen to. Those who well fortify their homes, hire private security, and watch the night unfold behind reinforced walls. Those without resources become targets. By design, not coincidence. What appears to be national unity is, in reality, a system that weaponizes inequality and disguises it as tradition. Since its debut in 2013, the Purge franchise has grown from a contained home invasion thriller into a sprawling dystopian saga, one that charts the evolution of state-sanctioned violence, political extremism, and manufactured fear. Across 5 films and a television series, the story exposes how easily morality collapses when legality is manipulated. Because in the world of the Purge, the most terrifying idea isn't that people are capable of violence. It's that the government figured out how to make it profitable, patriotic, and permanent. This is the Purge, not just a horror franchise, but a warning disguised as entertainment. The Purge did not emerge from chaos. It was born from collapse. In the Purge timeline, the United States faced economic devastation, overwhelming crime, and political instability in the early 21st century. Traditional parties failed to contain the crisis, creating conditions for a radical alternative to rise. That alternative was the New Founding Fathers of America, positioning themselves as a return to order and moral clarity. The NFFA campaigned on a single, extreme promise. Crime would be eliminated not through reform, but through permission. Their solution was a purge, an annual government-sanctioned event where all crime becomes legal for 12 hours. The policy was presented as a scientific and social experiment. Violence would be released. Aggression would be purged. Society would reset. But from the beginning, the rules revealed the truth. During the purge, emergency services are shut down. Police and fire departments stand down. Hospitals close their doors. Government officials receive immunity. Only weapons above class are restricted, ensuring the most efficient tools of violence remain legal. This is not an absence of law. It is law rewritten to protect power. Official statistics released by the NFFA claim dramatic drops in crime and unemployment. But what those numbers don't show is who disappears during purge night: the elderly, the poor, the homeless, the undocumented. Entire populations erased from the data. The purge doesn't make crime vanish. It absorbs it into the system. By legalizing violence for one night, the state avoids responsibility for the rest of the year. Death becomes policy. Survival becomes a privilege. And morality becomes conditional, dependent not on right or wrong, but on the calendar. This is the foundation of the purge. Not a breakdown of society, but its most honest expression. When The Purge was released in 2013, the franchise didn't begin with riots, militias, or political speeches. It began with a family dinner. Set during a single purge night in an unnamed suburban community, the first film narrows its focus to the Sandin family, a deliberate choice that exposes a moral contradiction at the heart of the purge system. James Sandin is a successful salesman for a home security company, designing fortified houses specifically to survive purge night. His wealth is a direct result of the fear the purge creates. While his family claims to oppose violence, their safety is built entirely on its existence. This is the franchise at its most intimate and most uncomfortable. The illusion of control shatters when the Sandin son, Charlie, activates the home security system early after witnessing a wounded man being hunted outside. Against the rules of the night, Charlie lets the stranger inside, transforming the Sandin home into a target. Soon, a group of well-dressed, masked young people surround the house. They are not desperate criminals. They are affluent, articulate, and disturbingly polite. Their demand is simple: surrender the man so they can kill him. What follows is not a siege driven by chaos, but by entitlement. The intruders see themselves as participants in a civic duty. Violence is framed as tradition. Mercy is treated as betrayal, and wealth becomes justification. As the night escalates, the film strips away every illusion of moral superiority. The Sandins' neighbors, who once praised James for his success, reveal their resentment and turn on him. Survival becomes transactional. Trust collapses. Community disintegrates. The message is clear. The purge doesn't corrupt good people. It rewards the worst impulses while punishing empathy. By sunrise, the Sandins are alive but permanently changed. The house still stands. The system still functions. And the cost of their survival is written in blood. The first Purge film doesn't ask whether murder should be legal. It asks whether a society that profits from violence can ever call itself civilized. After establishing the purge behind closed doors, the franchise does something crucial. It steps outside. The Purge, Anarchy, 2014, abandons the safety of fortified homes and places its characters directly in the streets of Los Angeles during Purge Night. This shift transforms the franchise from a contained thriller into a full dystopian portrait of America under legalized violence. For the first time, we see how the purge actually functions on a national scale. Those caught outside, workers, the poor, the unlucky, are hunted immediately. Organized groups roam the streets. Heavily armed mercenaries capture victims to sell to wealthy clients who prefer to kill in private rather than risk themselves outdoors. Violence becomes an industry. At the center of Anarchy is Leo Barnes, a former police sergeant whose family was destroyed during a previous purge. He enters the night seeking revenge, but instead becomes a reluctant protector, forced to confront the fact that personal vengeance is meaningless compared to the system enabling it. The film reveals an essential truth. The purge isn't random. It is curated. Certain neighborhoods are left defenseless. Certain populations are targeted. Meanwhile, the wealthy observe from secure locations, outsourcing the violence while claiming moral distance. This idea reaches its peak in The Purge, election year 2016. Set during a presidential race, the film introduces Senator Charlie Roan, the only survivor of her family after a Purge massacre years earlier. Running on a platform to abolish the Purge entirely, Roan represents a direct threat to the ruling New Founding Fathers. The response is immediate. The NFFA removes a long-standing rule granting immunity to political candidates, ensuring Roan can be legally targeted. Religious extremists and Purge loyalists frame the event as a sacred tradition, something ordained rather than engineered. At this stage, the franchise fully drops any pretense of neutrality. Election year depicts the Purge as a tool of political suppression, a method of voter control, a ritualized form of state violence. The election doesn't determine whether the Purge continues. It determines whether the truth about it can survive. By the end of election year, the Purge is no longer just a night of violence. It is a national ideology maintained by fear, enforced by faith, and protected by power. By the time the first Purge was released in 2018, the franchise had already shown what the Purge does to America. This film asks a more dangerous question: who created it and why? Set years before the original film, the first Purge follows the introduction of the Purge as a one-time experiment conducted on Staten Island. The new Founding Fathers present the event as voluntary participation, offering financial compensation to residents willing to stay and take part. The promise is carefully constructed. No one has to commit violence. Aggression can be expressed in any form. And at first, that promise holds. Residents party. They vandalize property. They release frustration, but they don't kill. The experiment is failing to produce the bloodshed the NFFA needs to justify its ideology. So the government intervenes. Mercenaries disguised as civilians are secretly deployed into the Purge zone, escalating the violence and deliberately targeting residents. The chaos that follows isn't organic. It's engineered. For the first time, the franchise confirms what had only been implied before. The Purge was never a response to human nature. It was manufactured evidence. The film centers on a community forced to defend itself, not from one another, but from the system meant to observe them. What emerges isn't savagery, but solidarity. Neighbors protect each other. Violence is resisted, not embraced. The message is unambiguous. Left alone, people don't choose mass murder. The state chooses it for them. The first Purge reframes the entire franchise. The chants, the masks, the so-called tradition, all of it is propaganda, layered on top of a political weapon designed to eliminate undesirable populations under guise of democracy. This chapter reveals the Purge's greatest lie. It was never about freedom. It was about permission to erase. By the time the Forever Purge arrives in 2021, the rules no longer matter. For years, the new Founding Fathers promised that violence could be contained, that it could be switched on for 12 hours and shut off by morning. The Forever Purge proves that was always a lie. Set after the NFFA regains political power, the film opens with a reinstatement of the annual Purge. But when the sirens signal its end, something unprecedented happens. The violence doesn't stop. Extremist groups, calling themselves Purge Forever, refuse to stand down. They believe the Purge should never end, that America must exist in a permanent state of lawless cleansing. What was once policy has become faith. For the first time, the nation openly fractures. Cities collapse. Infrastructure fails. Government authority evaporates. The ideology the state nurtured can no longer be controlled. Violence is no longer seasonal. It's permanent. The story follows characters attempting to escape the chaos, moving through a country where purge rules have replaced civil law entirely. The borders close. Mexico becomes a refuge. Americans flee their own nation, reversing decades of political rhetoric. This is the Purge's final evolution, not as an event, but as a worldview. The Forever Purge delivers a franchise's bleakest conclusion. Once a society legitimizes mass violence, it cannot dictate when it ends. Systems built on blood do not self-correct. They escalate. The new Founding Fathers lose control not because they're defeated, but because their idea succeeds too well. The Purge does not save America. It consumes it. And in doing so, the franchise completes its arc, not with hope, but with a warning. You cannot build order on sanctioned cruelty and expect it to remain contained. Some experiments don't fail. They spread. Fun facts. James DeMonaco created the entire Purge franchise, writing every film and directing for 5 entries. This consistency is why the series maintains a single, coherent political and thematic through line. The idea for the Purge came from DeMonaco overhearing a road rage incident, which sparked the question, what would happen if violent impulses were temporarily legal? Despite its reputation, the Purge films are intentionally restrained in on-screen gore, relying more on implication, atmosphere, and social tension than graphic violence. The original The Purge, 2013, was produced for approximately $3 million and earned nearly $90 million worldwide, making it one of the most profitable Blumhouse releases and guaranteeing the franchise's expansion. The Purge masks were designed to appear neutral and expressionless, emphasizing anonymity and the normalization of violence rather than individuality or theatrical horror. Frank Grillo's character, Leo Barnes, was intended as a recurring lead, but his appearances ended after election year due to scheduling conflicts, not narrative closure. The Purge. Anarchy marked a tonal shift inspired by 1970s urban action films, particularly The Warriors, influencing its street-level structure and ensemble cast. Election year, 2016, was deliberately timed to coincide with a real U.S. election year. When the first Purge siren sounded, it was sold as a solution. A nation on the brink was promised order through release, peace through violence, unity through fear. And for a while, the numbers seemed to agree. Crime went down, employment went up, the experiment appeared to work. But the Purge franchise ultimately reveals what those numbers were hiding. Violence didn't disappear. It was rebranded. Across 5 films and a television series, The Purge evolves from a single night into a national identity, one built on exclusion, manufactured consent, and the quiet acceptance of cruelty as policy. What begins as a controlled event becomes tradition. What becomes tradition becomes belief. And belief is harder to turn off than a siren. By the time the purge ends, America doesn't collapse because of criminals or chaos. It collapses because the system succeeded too well. It taught people that violence was not only legal, but righteous. The most unsettling truth of the purge is not its brutality, it's its familiarity. Because the franchise isn't warning us about what happens when laws disappear. It's warning us about what happens when laws are designed to harm, and everyone agrees to look away. This has been Cinema Uncovered, and when the siren sounds, the real question isn't what you would do, it's who the system already decided you were.